Charlotte gets a chance at becoming Ob Ehrenfest. She's overjoyed. She was raised by her mother, and she's overjoyed that the chance at being Ob Ehrenfest. And you know what Sylvester does? You guys want to know what Sylvester does? He arranges an engagement between Rosamine and Wilfred to basically make Wilfred the next Ob Ehrenfest again. But anyways, unlike what Veronica did, Sylvester did coddle. While Veronica coddled Sylvester, Veronica also surrounded Sylvester with competent like retainers, right? And for the time that was fine because Veronica was the tyrant shielding Sylvester. However, Sylvester was not a tyrant shielding Wilfred, and the times had definitely changed. Instead, Sylvester just kind of went, oh well, it's good luck, and let Wilfred be spoiled. He wouldn't like bring Wilfred back to his studies. He'd just be like, oh well, at that age, I too was doing this. But the difference is, by the way, Riharda didn't die, that Sylvester had Riharda, who basically whipped him into shape. Anyway, so where was I going with this? So Wilfred, the twisted little boy he was. He has a good heart, I believe. However, Wilfred is easily swayed. He doesn't really have much of a stance of his own, so to say. He'll follow the words of his retainers. So as I was saying, Wilfred is very easily swayed by the voices of others, especially that of his attendants. He was swayed to believe that his sisters, Charlotte and Rosamine, should cede their achievements to him by his retainer Oswald. For a little bit he goes, wait, no, maybe no, maybe that's a bad idea. And I was like, yay, Wilfred! And then his friend was like, oh yeah, I agree. And then Wilfred was like, yeah, maybe my retainer was right. And that's basically the tone Wilfred takes for the entirety of the thing. He's also extremely ignorant. While Deltine was arrogant and ignorant in her own right, Wilfred was something. He invited Georgine back on accident. He doesn't pick up on noble euphemisms. Like, I'd say he picks up on them even less than Rosamine does, which is kind of interesting because, like, Rosamine had less experience with noble society than he did, and he always acts like he knows so much better than Rosamine. He almost looks down on her at times, which, I mean, he does clean up after her a bit, but let's be so for real, she does way more good than he does. And at some point, Wilfred does acknowledge that, but that leads to him building like this anger towards Rosamine and simply blaming Rosamine for everything. It's all Rosamine's fault. Which honestly can't be good for him. And Sylvester doesn't really do all that much about it. When Wilfred goes to Sylvester and petitions for Sylvester to make Rosamine into Ob Ehrenfest, which wouldn't be odd if the Ob wasn't currently Sylvester, as in other duchies, or at least in the past, sometimes adopted children are adopted to become Ob because of their value to the family. You know, however, Sylvester highly values his family, and as such, if he were to disinherit Wilfred, he would disown Rosamine in the same breath. Because Wilfred got so bitter, he'd kind of almost lash out a bit, and he petitioned to Sylvester to break off his engagement with Rosamine, but Sylvester refused, saying that Wilfred had to take responsibility. Which, honestly, I get that Sylvester had the best intentions, because the Lessinglings were only permitting Wilfred's existence because of Rosamine, his engagement with Rosamine almost. And if he were to lose said engagement, well, Wilfred would be kind of cooked, guys. But I don't know. It's just so interesting to see how both Wilfred and Georgine and Sylvester were raised by Veronica. Now they turned out so differently, yet they raised their children to be similar but different. I'd say the only reason why Wilfred isn't straight up as delusional as Georgine is because, well, he is kind of delusional at times, but it's because he has Sister Charlotte and his mother Florencia to, like, deter his delusions. I wholeheartedly believe that, like, if not for Charlotte and Florencia and Rosamine, Wilfred would probably turn out to be another Georgine. I'm being so for real. But what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Bye bye.